All right, so over the weekend my neighbor came over and we got the clutch swapped. So I did flywheel, pressure plate, clutch, throwout bearing, clutch line, and clutch master. I replaced everything. The previous owner said that the clutch was slipping, so I went ahead and bought a full kit. Here is the clutch. Everything looked pretty good. There's some weird wearing here on the inside of the disc portion and on the inside of the pressure plate, and there is a groove on the outside, but it didn't look like it was that bad that it should be slipping. But what I did notice is this bearing. I don't know if you can hear that, but it sounds pretty hinky. And the flywheel looked okay. It doesn't look like they turned the flywheel, so whoever had this transmission out before probably put a clutch in it, but didn't turn the flywheel, which is probably why it's got weird grooves. Maybe that's what was going on. Not 100% sure. So, and he was nice enough to put my transfer case back in for me. So I do need to hunt down some bolts. We were missing one bolt out of the transmission to start with, so I'm going to get a bolt for that. And then I've got a few things I need to do, like put in the new drive shaft and then hook all the lines and connectors back up to the transmission transfer case. So I'll be working on that today. And then the other thing I want to do, hold on a second. All right, is put the new power steering bracket in. Here it is. I cleaned it all up, put a new bearing on it, replace the, if I can turn that around, replace the adjuster and the pivot there. Bracket I bought off of eBay used. The adjuster was tore up and bent, so went ahead and replaced all that. Now this bracket has to go behind that motor mount bolt right there, so I will be doing that. I also had to buy these 3 bolts here that go into the TJ intake manifold. I got these off of eBay as well. The 2 bolts here are the factory bolts for the YJ power steering bracket. We'll be reusing those. And the other thing I need to do is the valve cover gasket. I ordered a new one, so that's going to be the thing. And then once I get that bracket on, I can put the new belt on, and pretty much the front of the motor is done. And of course rehang the power steering pump back where it goes. So yeah, I'll still need to do fluid and oil in the transfer case and transmission. I don't know if I'll get all of that done today, but I'm going to try to get some of it done. I just spent the morning on the phone. It was a marathon phone call with doctors and scheduling people and all sorts of, still a hassle. So it looks like I finally get in to talk to the surgeon sometime next week. Wednesday, I believe, is the 29th. So hopefully I'll get some sort of update from them as far as what we're going to do next. Yeah, it's crazy. So we're still working on that. So hopefully I can get some of this knocked out today and it doesn't get too hot. But so that is my goal. And I'll probably start with the rear drive shaft and the lines and work my way forward until I get to here. I will need to put a block underneath the motor so I can jack it up just a little bit to take the tension off. There is a spacer behind this bracket. I don't know if you can see the lines right there real clearly, but there is a little spacer, and that is where this bracket goes. I think I need to add a little washer in there as well, just to make sure it lines back up. But I shouldn't have to take it off too much. But I do need to take that bolt out. We'll see if I can get that out without having to do too much once I get the pressure. If not, I might have to loosen all 4 of them to get the clearance. But all right, so I'll be back in a second as we do the drive shaft. All right, well, I was going to start with a drive shaft, but I came across a little problem and I wanted answer before I went ahead and tried to put this in. So this is a rough country drive shaft that is supposed to be for the lift. There's the part number. Now in the instructions here, because they came with some, not much of one, they state, if I can get this open, that there are supposed to be some grease fittings, and you need this needle type, and there's grease fittings at the CV end, and there's grease fittings down at this end. I've checked all the way around the CV joint. In between the end caps, there are absolutely no grease fittings at this end, even though they say in this instructions they're supposed to. Now at this end, as you can see, I taped this all back up, but there is a grease fitting right there. So I have reached out to Rough Country via email, and I am waiting for a response as to whether or not those have grease in them or how you're supposed to grease them, because I can't figure it out. I've looked in between. Like I said, I checked all the end caps. I don't know how you're supposed to get grease in those if they need grease per their instructions. I don't want to put this in and burn it up. I do know that at this end there is no grease. I pulled the end cap off and there was no grease in there, so definitely going to grease that end. But before I install that, I'm going to wait. So we're going to hop over to I guess I could do the valve cover. It's easy. It's only, what, 6 bolts or so. And then I'll crawl into the Jeep and start wiring everything back up. I'll have to, yeah, all my hoses and stuff are still pulled up here. So I'll go ahead and do the valve cover first and then go underneath the Jeep, get all the hoses run. And that way I'll be under the Jeep to put the jack so I can pull this bolt out so I can put the alternator back in. So I think that's what we're going to do. Yeah, nothing ever goes easy. All right, so it seems like my bolts are 11 mil. So I have a deep 11, a 3-inch extension, and a 3/8 ratchet. Here is my new gasket. I went with the rubber one. Like I said, these aren't on very tight. I can almost turn most of them by hand, so we're gonna go ahead and pop that out of there real quick. I noticed that all the valve covers I saw, because it was recommending new valve covers, all the ones I saw recommended were plastic. Mine's aluminum, so I don't know if that matters much or not, but okay. So I got some bolts to undo, then we'll get that up and out of there, and we'll see what the rocker assembly looks like. Alright, so that was fairly easy. All of the ones here on the driver's side of the valve cover were just finger tight and snug. The 4 at the end were tight, and 2 on the passenger side were tight. The others were finger tight. So I've unplugged the hose. I took the breather cap out, and this should, in theory, be able to lift off. I still do have one of the bolts in there. I couldn't get it out because it was just hanging out there. It's loose enough to come out. Oh, there I go. So I will need to swap this one to the other side, because that's where it goes. It didn't belong on this side. So now I should be able to get the valve cover out. Everything's unhooked. The throttle cable's out of the socket. I don't think there's anything else holding it, so let me pop that out of there. Okay. So what they did was they reused the old gasket. They put some Permatex on the valve cover side, nothing on the other side, but it's, you can see there's cracks and it's broken. So that's probably why this was leaking, had so much oil down the side. So I'm going to clean up the head surface. It doesn't look too bad. I'm going to check the rockers. It's kind of be hard to tell unless something's broke. So let me look over everything. They got Permatex all over that rear rocker. Oh, and this one too. Yep. So I'm gonna clean this all up, wipe it down, and then I do need to take these bolts out because when I unscrewed this part, the whole thing came out of the valve cover instead of unscrewing the keeper first. So we'll get those all swapped out, cleaned up, and we'll put that back together real quick. Alright, so I just been taking this towel here. The Permatex came up pretty easy, and you can see where I've cleaned it. I'm just going to rub all this Permatex off real quick. There's these little ears. I was going to use my rubber wheel, but I was afraid the ears would get in the way. So, and since this towel's working, once I get all this rubbed down, I'll get some brake clean and go back and clean it up a little bit better. But yeah, the gasket came off in one piece. It was mostly siliconed anyway. So yeah, this is going to clean up fairly nice. So let me finish this real quick, and then I'll do the head. Alright, so I've been working on this for about 10 minutes. I've got pretty much all of it cleaned up here except for this one little corner. I'm just, like I said, just rubbing it with this towel. It seems to be peeling that stuff off pretty simple. I will go back over it with some brake clean and probably clean up, spray the inside and let it soak for a little bit. Do the outside as well with the engine degreaser and get some of the extra oil and crap off of it. But yeah, not too bad. Okay, so I'd say that came out pretty clean. So I'm going to do the outside real quick. I'm going to hit it with some of the degreaser, and then I'm going to take this little wire brush and just lightly go over and clean up, damn trains, clean up some of the edges and see if we can get this cleaned up so it doesn't have all the dirt and shit on it. So we'll clean it up a little bit and see how it comes out. I'm not going to get overly crazy with it, but enough so that it at least looks decent when I put it back in. Alright, so valve cover is been cleaned. Like I said, I just took the wire brush and some of this gunk engine degreaser, and of course the sprayer part broke, so I went and got another sprayer and it didn't work either, so I just had to kind of dump it on there and wish it around. So I blew it all off so there's no standing liquid. I blew the inside out to make sure that was all good. Now we're going to go up on top and clean off the head surface, just wipe it down and make sure there's no silicone or anything left on that, and then we'll be able to put the new gasket on and put this back on. Alright, so because of their inability to operate tools correctly, the people who worked on this Jeep last, this is a size 11, see it fits on there perfectly, but they've got that squished on there so tight that I can't get the 11 inside there to break that free, because these were finger tight. The only thing that was holding them from spinning is the fact that they wedged that plastic, but they weren't even tight on the valve cover. This was one piece. I broke it. It was brittle. Trying to get it off of the plug wires. Doesn't really matter as long as the two ends work. So I'm going to use a pair of channel locks to grab hold of the nut so I can spin that off and put that back in correctly. And then we can start putting the valve cover gasket back on. Okay, that was way more work than it needed to be. Yeah, they had those so tight that they did not want to come out of there. So now I can start. I'm gonna wipe down the the mating surface on the head there, and then we'll get the new gasket on there. It looks pretty decent. I don't see anything on there really, just kind of a little dusty. So we're just gonna run a towel over it real quick, make sure it's clean, and then put everything back together. All right, so just like I did with the oil pan gasket, I'm going to put a few dabs just where these little keepers are, and that way it will hold the gasket in place and I don't have to worry about it falling out or not getting aligned. I was going to just set it on the head, but then I noticed this gasket has grooves, so I'm going to make sure that everything lines up by doing it just like I did for the oil pan. So a few dabs, just very lightly. All I'm going to do is hold the gasket, not seal the gasket, and we'll call that good. All right, so we're going to let that set up for a few minutes, get nice and tacky so that it will stick. And I've already cleaned off the head surface, so that's all ready to go. I guess I could go underneath while I'm waiting and get a jack up underneath the motor so that I can see about getting those bolts loosened up so I can put that bracket in place. All right, so I got a jack down there. Now I just got to figure out what size those 4 bolts are. Either 5/16 maybe, well, or 5/8, not 5/16, 5/8 maybe. Let me grab some tools. All right, so there's a jack. I got a rubber foot for my quick jack under there. I got the top one out that I need. Now I'm just going to loosen these 3 up and then apply enough pressure that I get a little bit of gap and I can get that old spacer out of there. Okay, so they were 9/16. I guess I forgot to mention that. And I've got them all, these other 3 backed out about 5 mils. So there should be enough room. Might take a pry bar or something to get in there. I do have, like I said, I do have the jack here on this rubber block. So it's not actually going to, even if this jack fell, this wouldn't go anywhere because these bolts are still in there. They are held in with some Loctite, so they're going to be a little difficult to get out. But I should be able to maybe get a pry bar in there and move it back just enough. So let's see what we get. All right, might be hard to see, so let me, as we jack up, we're starting to get a little bit of space between that. It looks like we've got quite a bit of space back there. So I'm going to go up on top and see if that bracket will fit behind that now. All right, so it looks like we got some pretty good space now. Yeah, let's see if I can get that bracket in there. Okay, once I got the bracket in the right orientation, it slipped right behind that spot. So I'm going to go ahead and get the 2 bolts right here started. That's these shorter ones. And then we'll try to get that bolt back into there, and then we'll slowly put everything back to where it was and lower the motor back down and tighten up all the bolts again. That's the plan anyway. Let's see if it goes that way. So they say if everything goes back together, there's something wrong. So I got the 2 bolts here put in, that holding the bracket, and I did get that one started and it did thread, so that's awesome. Now I am going to put these 3 long ones in here just to see if everything lines up. Look at that, it does. All right, these are a little pain in the ass to get started sometimes. There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to tighten up those 4 bolts again, take the motor off of the jack stand out, the jack out from underneath the motor, and then we can put the power steering pump in and tighten all this stuff down, and then we should be able to put the valve cover on because it's had enough time to set up. All right, so got these all snugged back down as tight as I could get them. I know in one video where I saw that the person that did this said that they put a spacer behind that. one because of the other one, but once I tightened it down, it seemed to go flush. I can't get anything between that, so I don't think I needed a spacer. But other than that, so all of the bolts there are tight. Go ahead and get the power steering pump hung, and then we'll get that gasket for the, or get the valve cover back on. Man, I'm having a hard time today. Okay, I think I found another difference. So I'm using my YJ pump with a TJ pulley, and I think I figured out, the other person that I saw their video, they bought a whole pump and assembly. Now, these bolts thread into the manifold. On the YJ, they bolts threaded into the pump. So what I'm going to do is take a drill bit and drill the threads out, and that will solve that problem. But other than that, everything lines up, bolts are all in. I just need to tighten those two down so that these stay in the right position, because you kind of have to lift this up to make these thread right. But we're going to skip that and do the valve cover, and then we're going to call it a day because I'm hot. All right, so that went on pretty smoothly. Just had to move the one heater hose and the throttle cable up out of the way a little bit, and it dropped right in. I did, before I even tried it, turned it upside down and gave it a little shake to make sure that the gasket was set in place. Now I'm just going to go through and put the bolts in, and I'll come back tomorrow and torque them down. But yeah. All right, let's get on that. Okay, so all the bolts are back in, finger snug. I hooked up the vacuum line, I put that cap back in. So now tomorrow I'll just come back, torque those down. I want to say they're like 7 to 10 foot-pounds. I don't remember off the top of my head, so I'm gonna look that up. And then I just have to put these two plastic pieces that hold the spark plug wire, and this piece that holds the hoses, and that will be done. Whew. All right, that was a lot of fun. Like I said, tomorrow I'll also drill out that pump. We'll hang the belt, and what else do we have to do? We have to figure out what that plugged into, because I don't remember. It's something towards the front of the motor. I know that one plugs into the pressure line over there. It comes off the power steering pump, so yeah. Okay, well, thanks for watching.